Good afternoon, everyone. We're still missing one panelist here, so we're going to ask him all the questions. But we're gonna continue on with the show. So my name is Jordan Wiggins. I'm a partner at Deloitte Consulting in our media and entertainment practice. And today's panel is on cable TV, film, and broadband, new content, new network streams, platforms, and devices. So thank you all for coming today. We are the last panel before the Dodgers game at 5, so I hope everybody enjoys the show. Wanted to have each of the panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll get started with questions.
My name is Edmund Shapiro. I'm with Cisco. I have been working with the service provider industry for quite a few years now, working on... My name... I can hear that. All right. My name is Edmund Shapiro. I'm with Cisco. I have been working with service providers for many years on deploying technology for digital television. Originally came out of NDS. We're responsible for security, conditional access, digital rights management, middleware, set-top box software, et cetera. Have been part of Cisco for 5 years and have been working on all aspects of the video ecosystem, including media delivery and other aspects. So.
Can you hear me? Yeah. My name's Amit Ziv. I head up business development strategy for Epix. In my role, I oversee our distribution of the network, both with MVPDs and OTT services, both virtual MVPD and SVOD services. And I also handle our TV Everywhere platform strategies and structuring any of our deals with the various app platforms. Epix, for those of you that don't know, premium TV network owned by Viacom, Lionsgate, and MGM. We have output deals with those three studios, Paramount, Lionsgate, and MGM, for their first-run theatrical output and subscription rights associated with all those titles. We have over 2,000 titles on the service at any given time, and over 3 billion in domestic box on the service at any given time. Multi-platform is in the DNA of the business. We're always very aggressive in TV Everywhere. We have apps on every platform. We're first on many platforms, first to launch temporary download, and we're bullish on the wholesale business, and we're bullish on the premium subscription business.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Friend. I run ad technology for Fox Networks Group. We are not a subscription business, but we are also very much multi-platform. I've been at Fox almost 3 years now. When I got there, I was the inaugural ad tech team member. We're up to 17 people now, so if that's testament to the amount of work we're expected to do, then I think we're in a good spot. Fox Networks Groups consist of Fox Broadcast Company, FX Networks, Nat Geo Channel, Fox Sports, Fox Deportes, Big Ten Networks, and our engagement advertising arm, Truex. We have up to 20 different platforms per business unit, not including Hulu and not including the many, many MVPDs that we partner with as well. No, that's good. All right, thank you.
I'm Adam Ware, and I'm the head of digital media and business development for Tennis Channel. We are the fastest growing network in the entire world. No, okay. We're doing pretty good, and I oversee pretty much everything that's digital, including a first of its kind subscription / authenticated digital product with TV Everywhere and OTT in the same product, and we were the first network to go over the top. And the first network to combine the two into one, and so far it's been pretty good.
I'm Scott Barton, and I head up digital products and digital programming for Starz. That falls to anything from MVPD set-top on-demand offerings to OTT offerings across new distributors, as well as our Starz app and TV Everywhere products, which are consolidated to a single destination. Starz is a premium TV network. We have 17 linear channels. We have on-demand offerings across all the major affiliates. And as I just mentioned, we have just recently stepped into the OTT space with companies like Amazon and Sling, as well as a recent direct-to-consumer app proposition across several key devices and platforms.
Perfect, thank you. And Scott Brown, who's not here. Scott is the SVP of Technology and Strategic Relations, Engineering Technology, at the Nielsen Company. So hopefully he finds his way here soon. So let's start with questions here. So our first panel topic today is TV networks and the multi-screen experience, the opportunity, winning strategies, and future opportunities. First question I'm going to start with is Adam. On here, you look at TV everywhere in the OTT models. You've been at the forefront of a lot of that with the Tennis Channel. What do you see as some of the virtues and challenges around those areas?
Pass. We were first to go subscription, and we were not first to go TV everywhere, but the first to do both, as I said before. And I think our perspective is a unique one because we were an independent, little tiny TV network who always was sort of challenged to, not do anything other than just be happy you're carried on a system and do the best we could in terms of getting distribution and growing our business. While all that was going on, it became quite clear to us that the viewer wasn't necessarily living by the same rules that we were all forced to live by. They were not necessarily saying they were going to just watch TV on the way television was delivered. And so we had to make a strategic decision, which was, okay, well, how do we best deliver this sport? We happen to be in a pretty interesting business, in the live sports business. We also happen to be in the singular sports business. So if you want to watch tennis, you generally would go look for a network called Tennis Channel. And that was a pretty decent value proposition. But what was key to us was that the sport of tennis doesn't really fit on one channel. It's sort of like a March Madness is the analogy I use on previous panels, et cetera. But it's every week, and sometimes there's multiple March Madnesses going on in 1 week. I think this week alone, for instance, we have 4 tournaments going on simultaneously, from 2 ATP tournaments and 2 WTA tournaments, and that just doesn't fit on one channel. So the question for us was, how do you go and reach these viewers that are no longer just watching television? How do you deliver far more product that doesn't fit on one channel? And how do you do it in such a way where you're really not threatening the basic ecosystem? And I think that was the challenge, and that I think is the challenge that all of us are facing, right? Which is, how do you launch this, and how do you go into the business without really tearing down the basic business that you're in, which is the television business? I could expand on that.
Yeah, anybody else want to comment? I know, Scott, you mentioned you're kind of starting that journey on the OTT side. So in terms of...
in the premium space, we're a little bit different. I think what's important for us is, and to Adam's point, striking that balance between the traditional business and the new business is always a challenge. For us, I would argue it's a little bit easier. And so what's important is to deliver a consistent experience regardless of how somebody subscribes to Starz. And so the reason why we consolidated our app into a single destination is simply because we want to make it as easy as possible for our consumers. So that consumer could have bought Starz through DirecTV or through Charter or through Time Warner, or bought it directly through iTunes or Google Play. But the key is we're not sending them to separate destinations, and the content offering is identical between the two. The goal here is, and I think this is important for all of us really in the digital space, to always look at things through a consumer's viewpoint, through a consumer lens. We've recently redesigned our application and relaunched it back in April, and it's been a tremendous success for us. In fact, I just looked on my phone. We're right now the #4 top grossing app in iTunes, and we're very proud of that. And I think the reason we're accomplishing that is It's all about ease and easy discovery and intuitive design. And the way you execute that, again, is consistency regardless how somebody subscribes. And so from my standpoint, content offerings are identical regardless of how you subscribe to Stars. And I think that's how we'll be successful going forward.
Thanks, Scott.
So on the other side of the spectrum, for a company like Fox, we have usually 3 quick hurdles to clear when these types of things come our way. I mean, the initial one's distribution, because we want our content everywhere. However, we also want we want our IP content everywhere, but we also want the opportunity to monetize it ourselves. And then comes seeing what comes out of the distribution deals, given that there's a newness to this, to all parties involved. A lot of it's crafted based on whomever's doing the negotiating and where they made their bones. So you might see some deals come our way that are structured in a linear fashion and then include both inventory and revenue shares, which brings us to the second hurdle, which is the technical integrations. Because now you have 2 companies involved in this and their collective set of technical providers who also have probably never done this before. And then you have a bunch of individual rule sets based on the many different streams of content that we output. And then the last is monetization on those platforms, because we monetize via advertising. So getting the advertisers and agencies interested in these new platforms and comfortable with it is also one of the last hurdles that we do.
Thank you. So you look at the next topic I want to get into is everyone's favorite of cord cutting, bundling. So Edmund, I'm going to ask you this too. Right now you look at a zero-sum game, so how can they coexist when you look at bundling and cord cutting?
Well, what we're seeing is that the function of linear and bundles of channels as we've known them are it's a curation function, and the fact is that they're tied to rights. The bundling right that one comes up with is not a technical function. We have technology today that allows you to deliver the content that is received in the same fashion that you do it at home on your DVR, only you're doing it from the cloud. So how do they coexist is really just it's a hangover from the rights of the past. I personally don't deal with the actual negotiations that some of these guys do. I can talk mostly about the technical side of it. But from our point of view, once you have marked content as here is a start and a stop location, that start and stop location is an event, and you can download that content and turn it into a downloadable piece of content, or you can treat it as something in a time zone which you can go back and forth on. So the time and the time continuum is what I mean, the bundle, that's what it comes down to. It's a window. So then the question is, how do we drive windows, technically speaking, and really do consumers care? I mean, at the end of the day, that's a traditional construct of how we sold. So it's access. In the end of the day, we enable access.
I think the business has evolved, obviously, right? And I think the bundle was built on the notion that you would get more for your money, right? So there was an efficiency to it. And you would get all sorts of choices, and you'd get, broadcast networks, and you'd get sports, and you'd get news, and, kids, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then all of a sudden you got, not 3 kids networks, you got 5, then you got 10, and then you got 15, and then you got a kids network that was, just about, kids based on action figures, and then it was, another kids network based on something even smaller and more niche, and everything just got passed on to the consumer. So it became less about the consumer, right? Where the bundle started with the idea that we were trying to give the consumer more, and it ended up being, let's just pass on the cost to the consumer. And I think the challenge to the bundle, which has been evident for a while, really became apparent with the Dodger deal. Right? It was almost a channel too far, if you will. So for those not familiar with it, the Time Warner Cable paid a ton of money for the exclusive rights for the Dodgers. And the assumption was that they would then go distribute that on other platforms in Los Angeles, whether it be DirecTV or Fios or others, and charge them a lot more money for the games than they were paying before on another network that they still had to carry, even though that other network didn't have the Dodgers anymore. And DirecTV and Fios, for a whole host of reasons, said, we can't do that anymore. So this has got to stop somewhere. And I think for us, and that has now led to people trying to understand, well, maybe there are just too many channels in a bundle. Maybe there should just be, a core 70 or 80 perhaps, and the rest should either go OTT or perhaps not exist. I like to think that if you understand your audience and you are targeted enough, then OTT is a very valuable path to it. For Tennis Channel specifically, it's not a zero-sum game, right? And that's why we put them in the same product, because Tennis Channel Plus, which is our subscription over-the-top product that costs $90 a year, is designed to deliver more content to someone who is already a Tennis Channel subscriber. So the theory being is you are a Tennis Channel subscriber, you'd want to subscribe to Tennis Channel Plus because you'll get all this other live sports that doesn't fit on one channel. Nowhere in there have we ever said to ourselves that Plus was designed to be a competitor to Tennis Channel. It's actually only meant to augment, really, or complement a bundle.
I would just add a few things. So, I agree with everything you said. The growth in the bundle was ultimately driven also by the growth in MVPD households and the associated growth in ARPU attached to that. As MVPDs have maximized their penetration, the new segment, it was cable, it was DBS, it was telco, and now it's digital distribution, non-facilities-based distribution. In our view, it doesn't make a difference. We, as a premium network in a subscription business, our goal is to maximize value for the entire supply chain. While MVPD video households have started to cut the cord, if you will, we think the bigger risk there on an industry level is more about the cord shaving, and that really impacts basic cable networks versus premium, since they're reliant on that 90+% penetration. Separately, for us, what we're really focused on is MVPDs might be hurting on the total video household front. Cable and telco still control broadband, and the growth is going to be in cross-selling video across broadband, video households, wireless, triple plays, quad plays. And you're seeing that's ultimately what's driving the consolidation on the MVPD side, and that will result in the consolidation on the programmer side. And to your point, the media networks, their portfolios will have to rationalize as well. And I don't think that it's going to happen overnight. Certainly it's driven by the rights and the distribution, but you have large media companies that have minimum penetration rates in their deals, and that's not going to change right away. While it is a long-term risk, it also presents opportunities, and we're seeing an explosion. It was SVOD, and now it's really moving into multi-channel linear services that are delivered over the top, Sling being the first, then View, and now everybody reads about all the new entrants that might be launching soon, as in Amazon, Hulu, and Amazon Hulu and YouTube as well. So all opportunities, but yeah, the legacy structure is definitely changing.
I also think it's what you were talking about before, right? It's about the experience too, right? So if someone's having an experience on a typical cable, box or satellite box, whatever, where you're scrolling through and so on, by nature that relationship is a multiple channel relationship with multiple types of services appealing to a household versus an app experience, right? Where an app experience can also reflect that, but an app experience, just by the nature of what it is, by the nature of the data it can collect, by the nature that it could be customized by individual taste and so on, depending on what your brand is, depending on what your programming is, the opportunity to have a literal one-to-one relationship between a programmer, right, and a consumer is something you can't possibly have on a multi-channel provider and a consumer. And by that definition alone.
And to that point, I think, breaking that into two components, and, Scott, you talked a little bit about this earlier when you showed us your phone, but the impact of kind of app-driven video delivery on mobile, everything going on. So as you look at the power of a network and the apps you're building for delivery, can you comment a little bit on that?
Let me go back for a second and actually comment on what these
Sure.
guys were just saying, because I think it's important, and certainly agree with both gentlemen here, especially in the premium space. If you think about the bundle, there are scenarios, especially for a premium service like Stars or Epix, you're in $100, $120 in the bundle before you even have opportunity to get a premium service. And I think the shift that's happening here as far as being able to find ways and work with our partners, be it an MVPD or a new streaming partner, to find more affordable ways to get our content to folks who want it, get our content and discover incremental subscribers and monetize that. I think that's just good for everybody, and I think that becomes part of the choice that evolves here. And I don't think it's not either or. There's been new entrants in the space for as long as I've been around in this industry. It isn't that long. If you think back to cable, satellite came in, and then telcos came in. Now there's streaming services come in, and I think the business has to evolve with that and find ways to get a valuable subscription for us to consumers on an affordable basis. And so I think that's kind of for us the answer there.
Do you have something else you wanted to add?
There was another question, but I forgot what it was.
Yeah.
I'll go back to it. Go ahead.
Well, so regarding the apps, I'll go
Yeah,
there.
sure.
So in Cisco, we have a platform called Infinite Video. And Infinite Video offers two experiences, basically. One is a branded premium user experience. And the reason I bring that up is because that premium user experience crosses multiple devices. Once you've learned how to discover something on your PC, it applies on your iPad, and it applies on your big screen Linux TV as well, or on your set-top box if you happen to be a service provider. It's that same experience, and that experience is the app. In a sense, it's always been the app. In the old days, it was an electronic program guide. It was a broadcast app. It didn't have any personalization, but it was still, you knew how to get from point A to point B. With the other experience that we offer, it becomes much more of a, what does the device require? Some devices say, I'm only going to let you go up, and I'm going to let you go down or across, and that's it. And so every time you move from this device to the next, you actually, even same content, you actually have to learn a new experience. And so there's a combination of those out there. And so app doesn't necessarily cover it in the world that we live in, but we support both models.
Yeah, look, totally agree. In fact, the redesigned Stars app that we're rolling out as part of our rebrand, we have identical experiences, whether it's iPhone or Android, Roku, just recently rolled out Xbox One. There's a consistent experience, and to your point, you create that, this is the Stars experience. I know where my list is. I know where my playlist is. I know how to find series and how to discover movies and recommendations and what's new and what's popular, what's trending within that platform at the time is all consistent. And so a user, and we're seeing things like this. A user could be on an iPhone and then go home and look at their Apple TV, and their Stars experience is consistent. So completely agree that there's value and consistency, especially in the premium space.
Right.
So I can actually speak about that from the other side, because the way the Fox business units, grew up in the digital world was a little more siloed. So initially, we have 6, broadcasting business units that all put out their own apps, and oftentimes multiple apps for different bundled content. And I think our approach from that has been, hey, let's get the content to the user and consolidate our approach so that they come to our content in a more natural fashion.
And Scott, what do you think it's taken for you guys to get to number 4? You mentioned that earlier. So what what has led you down that path, and how have you achieved
Can I answer
that type of success?
I'm a little nervous about Adam answering, to be honest. I mean, look, we've paid attention to what's happening. We had previously we had 3 TV Everywhere only platforms, and we saw that we were making things difficult for our consumers, and so we consolidated them. Right, we consolidated the brand. In the if you look at the linear service, we have Stars channels and Stars Encore channels, but in this space, I think that just adds confusion. And so what we've done is we've taken the Stars library and the Stars Encore library, we've consolidated into a single app destination, and we added in a direct-to-consumer component to it as well. So if there's a broadband-only home user out there and they hear about a cool show like Power, they can go to the Stars app and find it. And that's the same experience they'll find on stars.com as well, where maybe some of our competition might have 3 different websites to where you can go and either authenticate and consume, or consume as a OTT subscriber, or go to a site and see promotional content. We thought there was value in a single destination. So you can come to Stars and stars.com and you can see promotional content. You can log in with your MVPD credentials, or you can log in with your credentials from a purchase through iTunes or Google Play or Roku, and you can consume content right there too. And I think the learning for us over those years in consolidating was about making that single destination, and always approaching things from the viewpoint of, is this creating a better consumer experience, and therefore a better subscribers experience, and hopefully in the long run a stickier subscriber.
Perfect. Now, along those same lines too, so how do you think the multi-screen distribution format is going to have an impact on the overall consumer experience?
Was that to me again?
Yep.
Okay.
Or anybody else who wants to? Or
You want to answer for me on this one, Adam?
No.
Okay.
I don't answer for you.
For us, again, we're in the premium space, and so in the premium space, there's some benefits. The benefit is deliver a great experience. And so, frankly, I don't care what device you want to consume on. If we have subscribers who want to watch on set-top boxes, that's fantastic. If I have subscribers who just want to watch on iPads, also fantastic. What's important for us is to stay ahead of that curve and make it available for them.
I want to add that it's, again, back to the app experience. If you do have, and you seem to have this premium experience, one of the things that comes with that is that moving from a device to the device is not leaving a paradigm and moving to another. So one of the things with our platform, with the VideoGuard, with the platform that we offer to service providers, is you can stop watching something on your set-top box and go to another room, and it knows where you were. Or you just, you swipe like this from a handheld device to a big screen device, and the context goes with it automatically. It's that experience of maintaining that relationship no matter what device you're on, as opposed to the experience, which is perfectly valid other experience out there, which is that now I'm in the Apple ecosystem and it's doing something only when I'm on an Apple Mac and an Apple iPad.
Yeah, agreed. Maintaining resume points, very important. Yeah.
The only thing I would just add to that is I really think it does depend on what device you're on. As much as the device should be consistent, the experience should be as consistent as possible, so that if you're viewing in an app on your phone, and then when you get home you turn on your TV, you probably would prefer to go to connected TV because it's an app-like experience, and so there's consistency there. And the ability to start and stop where you left off from room to room, these are all critical to a viewing experience. That said, the screens are remarkably different in size, and they do different things, and they're driven by different age groups. So I think there clearly has to be a consideration for what you do on a phone or a watch versus what you do on a big, giant, 4K-driven screen.
Absolutely.
If you take it one step further, in the case of tennis or anything that is clearly fan-driven, right? The idea of servicing that fan, again, in the case of tennis, a big chunk of our audience happens to play the sport, right? And so we now have a relationship with that audience beyond just the typical remote control sitting on a couch relationship. We have a relationship with them because they've downloaded the app. We have a relationship with them because they've made a purchase from us directly. We have a relationship with them because we have data on them. And they're willing to give us the data because we deliver on a promise to give them more things that will help them either buy equipment, either take lessons, find theoretically other players that are in their area. I mean, just think about all the different things that exist that do then go to a very specific app experience. And I think the key growth going forward is how does one really balance all of this functionality inside an app? So I think today, BN just announced that they're launching 2 apps. One app for news, et cetera, and the other app for video. Very much like how there's ESPN and Watch ESPN. And the question is, how do those really combine, right? How do you take, for instance, just a bad example, but how do you take Watch ESPN and combine it with Uber, right? It'll be interesting to see how that combines. Well, in the sports business, that's exactly what people are thinking about. I think this is what Ballmer is exactly thinking about and talked about last week. What are they going to do with the Clipper app? All right? And they're dealing with things that happen because of the location you're at, things that happen that you're in the stadium or you're a fan, you're with other fans, and so on. And that's a uniquely different experience you're going to have than if you're sitting at home watching on a connected TV or through a cable box or satellite box.
I didn't mean to imply otherwise. I was trying to make the case that the app crosses the device boundary. So you lean in on your phone, you lean in on your mobile device. So touching that screen, moving it around with your fingers, something that's very unique to that experience, and you can really write your app in such a way that it takes advantage of that. The metadata that you can, the deep diving queries that you can do on your phone and your tablet, you can't do with remote control. It's just very difficult, but it's also a lean back experience. So what I was trying to say is you create a holistic experience that leverages the best of both of those without, and so when your consumer is working off of one, it sees, the consumer feels like they're in an experience that covers any screen. Mm-hmm. That's to the point of multi-device.
Yeah, I think content plays a big role here too. I think Adam's points about sports are spot on. In the case of Stars, we have a deep library of movies. We have a lot of original series that are performing incredibly well for us at the moment, and hope they continue to in the future, or I won't be on any more panels. I think what's important here is letting people consume the way they want to, and so the content offering that I offer up is identical. And so if somebody wants to watch, somebody's on their phone and wants to start watching Star Wars: The Force Awakens, they can do that. Likely what they'll do is go home and finish watching it on their Roku box or on their Apple TV device, but it's about convenience and enabling that viewing experience for that user the way they want. And so we're not going to shift our content offering based on device. It's more about enabling the best experience for that subscriber.
Yeah, I agree 100% from an Epic's perspective. We've been very aggressive in having apps on every platform, and now it's about having apps on the right platforms. Over time, those platforms have changed their own requirements. Smart TV platforms have all employed mixed strategies. Now it's about working with the right partners. I think that marketplace has really shaken itself out. We have the same programming and content type across our portfolio, so over 2,000 titles are available within the app on an on-demand basis, plus we have our linear feeds available for the lean-back experience to the extent that the subscriber wants that. Based on the fact that we primarily have full-length feature films, we see significant usage on the lean-back type of platforms like Roku or the game consoles. But separately, for the mobile experience, in order to provide the consumer with the value that they're looking for, we do grant them temporary download, so they have the ability to download titles when they have a Wi-Fi connection and they consume them offline at another point. or ping them up through Chromecast to a bigger screen. I think aside from that, frictionless experience around authentication, I think that's been an issue historically in the TV Everywhere front, albeit it's getting a little better, and I think consumers are starting to have a better understanding of what that actually means. That's all.
Now, as you look across, go ahead.
Just as the one person who's, we're responsible for the technical integrations of this and also baking advertising technology into it, this is always a pain in the ass for me. So we have many challenges here, given that, our content is live sports, it is entertainment, it is drama, it is, sitcoms, it is all over the map, snackable content, long-form content. So we run into a couple of challenges, given that, one, there's value in that multi-screen data as people jump from device to device. As you intimated, that the audience is different consuming content on connected devices versus mobile app, et cetera. But however, for us to tease that data out, there's a lot of rules around what we're allowed to do with it and what we're not allowed to do with it, because that gets into personally identifiable information territory that we literally need to, put out trial balloons to make sure that we're doing the right thing, because the rules aren't set and defined. There's not real clarity based on a obscure case from, I think, 1985, Blockbuster Video renter list. So it doesn't really apply to the world that we're living in and trying to navigate within today.
And as you look across those multi-platforms in terms of consumption, how do you see the VR concept coming to play in terms of creating deeper fan experience?
I'll just speak from our point of view. At this point, VR and really 360 video in our experience, it's a great marketing promotional tool. We just launched a regional series last Sunday. We launched a show called Berlin Station out of Paramount, and another show called Graves out of Lionsgate TV. Check them out if you haven't seen them yet. Huge marketing campaign. And we've been, in order to enhance those experiences, we launched a 360 interactive site for Berlin Station where a consumer can come in and really live the experience. We shot all this 360 video in Berlin on set, and it allows the viewer to have a much deeper sense of engagement. But at this point, it's promotional.
Our reaction generally is, wow, that's really cool. How much do you want us to pay for this? Right. And have a really hard time trying to figure out how to monetize it. What's interesting, though, is there are brands, there are advertisers out there that really want to be connected to VR experiences or VR stitched experiences or 360 experiences or what have you. And the problem is actually their demand is so great that you can't deliver enough content consistently to capture all that money. So at some point, the cost of delivering virtual experiences will come down so that one can actually make more and more of that content. And that's why I think you're seeing stitching becoming more and more sort of prevalent versus VR, because VR is very expensive. It's not, if you don't, again, in sports, which tends to be a pretty decent VR application, if you don't have access to that venue, right, then you can't put your cameras there. Then does that mean all of a sudden you're not in the VR, you can't do VR? Well, you can probably do virtual kinds of things. So, again, I'll go back to the original comment, it's really cool, and the cost of equipment has come down, but it's not quite there yet.
I would wholeheartedly agree on the ecosystem comment. One of the ecosystem is not quite there yet to really make it a mass market phenomenon, but that doesn't mean it's not a niche phenomenon. There's probably a lot of good money to be made in niche activities. One thing that it always feels to me is VR is a very solitary activity. Augmented reality or some other variation of VR, I think, is a much more social activity. And so I think that the mass market will more likely evolve into something that's a combination of both. You can choose to be on your own in your cave, or you can join your friends and watch the game together all over the world, that kind of thing. So,
Perfect.
but just to the point of resource, I mean, stitching, as you mentioned, we can do that in the cloud today. There's big cloud resources out there if you choose to use them that we can pull together pretty good content today. The standards are not there. Dash is there, but for instance, there's some proposals out there how to use Dash for delivering 360. We're still working through that.
And Edmund, let's stay with you right now. As you look at that in terms of content, and how do you see piracy coming into play?
Well, so piracy is a growing phenomenon. I think I saw a number recently where 69% of millennials actively use piracy, and 61% surveyed actively share passwords generally with their family, but then they move out, they're still sharing passwords. So piracy, if you look at it writ large, is a phenomena that I don't think is going away. And basically, as the technology has made what we call multi-screen, TV everywhere, video going to any place, anytime possible, and it's done over IP networks, which are ubiquitous, the ability to the ease at which we distribute that content is also the ease at which the pirates distribute that content. That is the reality that we live in. And as we get better, piracy will become even that much greater. So that's one of the things, that's the primary area where I focus most of my energy, is how can we build the right kind of platform for anti-piracy that works across all these devices in a common fashion. Plug for VideoGuard, which is our technology, does that today. We have a multi-DRM framework that allows a service provider like Tennis Channel to say, these are the rights across all platforms. If we're going to take jailbreak into consideration or not, whether we're going to have additional identity applied on top of what the device gives you or not. These are concepts that you have to look at. As far as distribution, you have to be able to attack it at multiple layers because there's multiple types out there. There is the commercial distribution houses, which are today looking more and more like official platforms. You can find them on Roku. You can find the app that say, it looks no different, and in fact, it's quite a bit cheaper than the apps that you get from the original source. So we're working closely with content creators and service providers to build an ecosystem by which you can identify, you locate, identify, verify, and eliminate all in real time, all based on machine learning and other aspects. So that to us is the way we're going to have to attack it, because you have to be, that's after it's out of the barn. But we also are looking at how do you keep it from getting out of the barn. And that's also a critically important aspect of it. You want to make sure that remember, if it's all IP content and you're just putting a bunch of pipes that encrypt it from point A to point B to point C to point D, every time it crosses one of those boundaries is a point at which somebody can potentially steal it. So we're looking at how do you look at it as an end-to-end system where you have to maintain a common platform for securing that content, no matter where it goes, and no matter how it, and also as it's sitting up there, you also have to be able to take into consideration authentication, who has rights to the content, if you're a content curator, do you have rights to the content, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a long story, long answer to a question.
Anybody else on piracy?
No, I can keep going.
No worries. Thank you. So you mentioned millennials, and there's a lot of conversations going on around how do you really engage millennials in terms of curating content and producing shows that really attract that demographic audience. So I may want to talk to you a little bit about that in terms of Epics and how you guys are focusing in on that specific demographic.
Yeah, sure. So, the overwhelming majority of our programming today is high quality, big box office, full-length feature films from Paramount, Lionsgate, and MGM. So, these are the types of, big action movies, or kids and family movies that that consumers want to watch, and that's why we pay big money for them. And our goal is to create an experience so that we can deliver those movies across any platform that our subscribers might want to get them. So it's whether it's building TV Everywhere apps and having them on all the mobile platforms or game consoles or Roku or Chromecast, or doing the right distribution deals with Sling or PlayStation Vue, or doing deals with Amazon or Hulu. So for us, it's really about just being smart on how that product is marketed and distributed. And then separately, with respect to the original series we just launched, also it's about getting it out there and being really aggressive and sampling and making sure that it's on every platform and there's the right awareness around it, so that we're ultimately converting folks to subscribers.
I mean, I think, again, it goes back to that, you touched on it, it goes back to what platform you're on, right? There's so many characteristics to millennials. So I think there's some that are experts on it, right? So like, I'm reminded of like Vice Media, right? Who seem to have a corner on the millennial audience until they launched a TV network, right? And then they didn't seem to have an idea as to how to reach millennials on a linear TV network, at least not according to the ratings. So, we could get into the Nielsen numbers, but that didn't appear to happen. So I think there are some common things, which is that they do care about group experiences. They do care that things are seamless from a tech side. And they do care that when you're talking to them, you have some understanding as to what device they're on. And they will run if you are trying to jam one experience into a different type of screen experience. Whether that is the length of the show, whether that's how the show is produced. I mean, ultimately, great programming will be watched, but you just look at what's sort of happened with Snapchat and how it delivered content experiences, and you get a sense that if you're in a storytelling business, you have to really think differently about how you present the content. In large part because of the device it's on, and in large part how the navigation works on the device it's on.
Yeah, look, completely agree. It's all about how you serve that content up. So at Starz, we've a good example would be one of our original series called The Girlfriend Experience, which is targeted millennials, half-hour shows. We played that off differently than we'd play a traditional show. So and we coincided its launch with our launch of our new app, and so we made all episodes of Girlfriend Experience available for binge all at once, because we know that is a way that that targeted demographic consumes content and wants to consume that content. Another show that might skew a bit older would be, but very popular with female audiences, would be Outlander. Now, Outlander we play off in a traditional fashion on a weekly basis, and much of that consumption is still happening on the linear channel side, although we see that shifting. So I think it matters what your show is and who your targeted audience is, and to your point, Adam, how you present it to that subscriber.
And Joe, I want to take it back to you, kind of full circle here on the personalization side of the house. So you talked about millennials, and now we're talking about really getting content, getting the personalization aspect of it. How are you actually using that data, getting around the personal data itself, but how are you starting to use that in some of your programming?
So what we're doing is we're testing different strategies for this right now. I mean, given the breadth of the content that we have, if we were to look at millennials specifically, I would just say, hey, go to FX, and you guys can consume it wherever you want to consume it, however you want to consume it. But as far as keeping people in the ecosystem, again, from an ad-supported model, we are trying to find what the sweet spot of the ad-supported model is. I mean, with the acquisition of Truex and the inclusion of their engagement ad products and everything Fox, I mean, that's the tacit negotiation with the user base that they get. Hey, if I watch this thing, I get less ads later. But additionally, throughout the ecosystem, we're testing things out like Preview Pass, so you don't have to authenticate, or you get a reduced ads load if you choose not to authenticate and you're a new user, et cetera. So to us, it's really about adjusting, testing out a hypothesis and seeing if it bears fruit. Not super glamorous, but we do have an approach at least. That said, your audience is as fickle as the results are. Once you get the results in, everybody's mood changes, period. So I guess the point is to be in both an experimentational and foundational mode at all times.
And how do you really see you guys maintaining the longer-term relationships with those viewers moving forward with all the changes going on?
Probably put out more Scream Queens and stuff like Rocky Horror Live. So we have a ton of live content. We're putting primetime simulcast on digital with linear as well. We have a deep well of content. Our distribution teams and the network leaders are negotiating full stack rights instead of the rolling 5, and that's kind of new in the past couple of years, to make sure that we have that well of content that matches consumer consumption of that content. If somebody wants to sit down and watch 35 episodes of something, it'll be there and ready for you. I think an interesting example on the subscription side, and sorry guys, but was how Westworld released. They put out, I think, 2 or 3 episodes, and then they just dumped the rest of the series online. And I think that was a great strategy. Suddenly people who are already like fans and chomping at the bit to consume more probably went home that night and consumed the rest of it as well.
It's all online?
Yeah.
Because I've only watched 3 episodes.
You got a baseball game to watch tonight, sir. And this is the only thing between us and drinks right now, by the way.
Go ahead.
So on the personalization front, there's, from a tech, again, going back to that description of a premium experience where you're engaging with the consumer and the consumer is engaging with the platform, we offer a number of approaches for personalization through A/B testing as well to try to understand, what consumers consider friendly and not friendly. But you have opt-in capabilities through personalization, and you get value out of it. So we try to provide many opportunities for that, up to that creepy layer, and you back off. So it's like there's lots of opportunity for personalization, and every demographic, every audience has a certain different willingness to accept it. Age has a lot to do with it as well. So we find that if you break your platform up into different demographics and you apply different rule sets, again through A/B testing to different groupings, you can get different levels of personalization and also the analytics, which drives a lot of that.
So for us, it's really about striking a balance here. So as a programmer, I'd love to say that our curated strategies are the best, and it's exactly what you should watch, right? And the fact is, they're great, but we also want to enable some level of personalization for that particular user. And if you think about the way we've structured our digital platform, we absolutely have curated collections. All the Bond films, or if we have a lot of titles from Jack Nicholson, we'll have a Jack Nicholson collection or kids collection. We have all that stuff, and people are comfortable with that. And those things are there for you. But we also have a recommendation engine. We also sort automatically by what's popular and what's trending at that time. We also surface what's just added, and frankly, those things take a priority on top of the curated offerings. And in the premium space, that's how you strike a balance, and that's how you deliver that. That personalized experience for subscribers, and certainly we're working on more ways to expand on that. Our strategy around our original series had been to target what we believe are underserved audiences, and so we've had great success with female viewers with shows like Outlander and White Queen, and next year with White Princess. We had, frankly, tremendous success with African American audiences in a show like Power and Survivor's Remorse. And so what we're finding is that's a driver to get people to our destination. And so the challenge for me and my team is to find ways to, now that they're here, how do I keep them? And how do I connect them to other types of content and really bridge them to either the next show or the next relevant show to them? And that's the magic sauce. in the digital space, at least as I see it.
And to take it one step further, what do you see in terms of new themes or formats going into next year?
Well, for us, it's been a successful strategy. So you will see more of the same from us. We will continue to target underserved audiences, and then we will then connect those audiences to other shows, other originals, or frankly, we have a very, very strong, we have 3,200 titles available, very strong, deep library of theatricals that we're finding people are coming for a show but staying for movies. And certainly that consumption, to points earlier, that consumption looks different by device, but the idea is get them to the platform and then find ways to hold them on the platform and extend that subscriber life.
Now, if you, Adam, this is for you in terms of the digital transformation that's occurring right now, but how do you see the coming of 3.0 impacting that content going forward?
It's good that you asked that question. We happen to be owned by a company
Yeah.
that's in the broadcast business. So if you're not familiar with what NTSC 3.0 is, you should go look it up and learn just a little bit about it. But it is probably the next broadcast standard in the United States. So if HD was the broadcast standard, a certain kind of HD standard, NTSC 3.0 basically will allow television stations through their over-the-air signal to deliver the internet, for lack of a better description. It will be IP-based. It will work off-air. It will get to a connected TV set. It will get to a mobile phone, and so on. And I think because of that, you're going to start to see more data-rich driven experiences, because there's now a tremendous amount of activity about really trying to understand all this data. And going back to the personalized experience again, and this is not really just like, Minority Report kind of fantasy vision stuff here. The ability to traffic an ad, presumably if the advertiser has created enough different types of creative, or to traffic different kinds of brands to a viewer in a way that they want to get it, will be, I think, accelerated because of 3.0. I think it's already been established as the standard for South Korea. I think Japan is right behind it. And all indications is that the U.S. will probably adopt the NTSC 3.0 standard. And that's going to just open up the floodgates in terms of internet-based delivery.
Evan?
I'd like to add, as a network, coming from Cisco, a networking company, and you mentioned the IP aspects of it. It's using a dash format, which is the same format that has been adopted for OTT moving forward as well. So what is really interesting about this is that there used to be a very big gap between the technology used to deliver broadcast signals, for instance, DirecTV or even the MPEG signals that digital cable guys used to use, which required a cable card, just to remind you, and the OTT, which has been all IP-driven signaling. So what you're seeing now is this potential hybridization, where you can take advantage of the fact that you have a broadcast signal. You can deliver one signal to every point on the earth if you choose to get that particular signal out that way, whereas any element of that signal, including specific data that might be metadata associated and synchronized with that particular point in the feed, could be very, very unique, personalized to a single unique individual. That's something we didn't have the ability to do as a technology company. We're looking at all aspects of that, from how we deliver that over 5G and how we leverage that together with the legacy plant that all of our customers have.
And just one more thing to add. I think the last part of 3.0 is that there's no data charges, right? So right now, all the value propositions about get unlimited data, roll over data, the data will go away. So if you think about the amount of consumption being done on a mobile phone or a tablet today, where people look for a Wi-Fi signal desperately to avoid data charges, that won't be the case, because the signal will be of that quality and delivered that way where you won't need it.
And how do you think that's going to change the making of content, with that technology coming out?
I think, again, it goes to the device, it goes to extreme personalization. Look, I think it's really about delivering, it's an overused term, but delivering personalized experiences to people.
Yep.
And there are opt-in experiences, and then there is data-driven experiences. The data-driven experience is the trickiest one, because you're making a presumption based on someone's usage as to what they want, versus someone opting in and telling you that they want this camera angle or that camera angle, or they want to follow this character versus that character. They're far more interested in the following arc number 3 around certain character than they are about arc number 1. When you start to think about this stuff, it's become a little mind-blowing, but someone's going to start experimenting with it. Someone's going to start telling these stories, and I think you're starting to see, in many ways, like I said, it's already happening with certain platforms.
So I agree. The distribution will enable things, but what's really enabling the change in the content creation is the technologies around content creation. I mean, what we talked about the ecosystem around 360 and VR. I mean, it used to take a $100,000 camera to give you a 4K content, but with stitching, we can take a bunch of GoPros and tomorrow there'll be little mosquito-like sensors that will be all around the actor, and it will give you that kind of experience that you today, we don't have the ability to achieve. So yes, I agree, and the fact that those sensors, the digitization of those sensors, gives us all kinds of metadata we never had before, like the heat in the room and all kinds of other aspects that we can't even imagine right now taking advantage of. With the new technology that we have that delivers synchronized data, we can synchronize cameras from around the world if we chose to do so, something we cannot do today. But the latest SIMT technology allows us to synchronize on timestamp from any point on the Earth. So effectively, we can synchronize any metadata to any content. So once you start looking at those technical ramifications, it's that, and the fact that we'll have machine learning that allows people who are interested in gaining that information coming from different places. That's when it starts to really start to blow up. So yeah, it's a combination of distribution, but also the creation technology.
Perfect. Any other final thoughts on personalization? Perfect. So I think I wanted to save some time for questions here at the end as well. So I wanted to open up to the audience for questions. Please.
I have a question to the high-value content producers that some of your companies represent here on this panel. In terms of the overall economics of the overall revenue stemming from a piece of content, whether it be a high-value series of TV episodes or movies, how does that evolve in an environment that is increasingly fragmented, albeit to reduce, as we have discussed? Is the net result an increase in overall revenue? Or is it a decrease, or is it working? Because as a former entertainment industry executive myself, I am noticing that there are typically several camps inside studios. You represent the most forward-thinking camp, but there's also the traditional camp that wants to hang on to their windows desperately, right? Because the studios are obviously very excited. So it's a very own question, but
Yeah, so I guess I'll take a first pass at it. Going back to what I was talking about, the negotiating rolling 5 versus full stack rights, as you suggested, a balanced producer, somebody who's been in the industry, knows how to secure distribution, talent, and financing, will already be great at these negotiations, and they'll be reluctant to give up those rights because they'll know they will be more valuable down the road. However, the networks are fighting to get those rights because they know they want to keep the audience within our ecosystem. And then as we distribute these, as we pitch these content items out, given recent FCC changes and given the fact that everyone and their uncle has an OTT company or an app somewhere, that's just more eyeballs and more places, more revenue streams coming in. So from a purely monetization of the distributed content standpoint, it's better for us. How does that drive how we make new content and what content we invest in and what we acquire, what we develop, et cetera. Given that, we have access to all this great data, these types of activities become more data-driven. So I can't suss out what I would say the future of it would be. I would expect at some point, if the end game there would be that content would be normalized to the point that the data would make it all the same, and it would suck. However, so I think you'll see a waxing and waning of how content gets pitched. Well, on one end of the spectrum, it'll be purely data-driven, and then on the other end, it'll be driven by like gut feelings, et cetera. So,
I mean, I think it's subscriptions that has driven it. So if you, I remember seeing this chart. I'd love to carry it around with me. If you look at all the content that was made pre-Netflix, pre-Amazon, pre-Hulu, not pre-YouTube, right, but pre those three, by traditional television, and then you compare it to post, there's far more expensive content, not necessarily successful, but expensive content being made than there was before. So whereas ad-supported theoretically should help you create it, it didn't really necessarily help create it. It was people willing to pay. Either they were already subscribers to cable, or they were cord shavers or cord nevers or cord cutters or what have you, and they were willing to pay a reasonable price, right? $9, $8, et cetera, per month. And a lot of people subscribed, and now you see a lot more expensive content being made. The second part is I do think there is a move as a buyer of content. I think there's definitely a move to buy as many windows as you possibly can. I think there is a move for sure, particularly in sports, because sports was the last to actually buy into TV everywhere, and still are resistant to TV everywhere. That there's a move now to actually go back and divide these platforms back up. So if you're in the linear TV business, you're going to pay a certain amount of money for that business, and if you're in the subscription OTT business or some other streaming business, et cetera, you're going to start seeing that price go up. And I think that only can lead to, the creation of more content and more higher-end content.
I think we're fighting now too. The whole subscription versus ads thing.
Yes.
It's like your gift's better because of the box it came in.
Well, we're in the ad business too. Don't get me wrong. We like ads.
It's the paradigm that we offered out, so I don't see how we can say one or the other is the reason for driving great content. I just think great content's naturally going to rise up to the top as a result of people like great content. Being able to look at it and say, this is why we think you should buy more of this or make more of this, I think that's definitely a matter of, again, what avenue you come at it from.
Yeah. Look, I think competition leads to
Yeah.
making great content. Right? So
Yeah.
if you end up finding not a whole lot of competition, you're going to sort of, and this is probably parts of the studios that are a little bit, parts of the buyers that are a little bit more conservative, which is, you just keep driving EBITDA. And meanwhile, someone starts catching up and slowly starts eating in, and all of a sudden you start to realize we have to start making a lot more shows, because where did these subscribers go?
Did you have a question in the front row right there on that?
Yeah, there's kind of a follow-on to that,
Yeah.
especially given some of the things were said. But to that point, is there kind of a bubble there? You talk about there's a lot more expensive content being made, but it also seems to be a race to bring people into those ecosystems. People are now buying back their content from boxers, people who don't have to show profit yet on a lot of that content they spend a lot of money on. So is there a bubble that's going to stabilize as we get down to a few players? And then you're going to make data-driven decisions on this is how many people we actually think will watch this. This is therefore what the attention is worth, and that's a flat price.
I actually think the biggest issue is people that are buying for the U.S. only, and people that are buying on a global basis. So if you're Amazon or you are Netflix, right, and you're making shows, not just buying movie packages or buying series and off-net stuff, but you're making original shows. You are now buying them on a global basis. If you are a television network, Tennis Channel included, right, you are buying for U.S. And I think anybody who's in a position to buy for multiple territories and can deliver it across multiple territories is in a wonderful position, right, to win out. And I don't think we're even close to that bubble yet. And I do think this is one of the issues with the studio system, right, because you have parts of that company that are selling it to television networks, and you have other parts in the US, you have parts of that company that are selling it to television networks abroad, and then you have a whole nother part of the company that are selling it to over the top, like Netflix and Hulu, et cetera. And I just think that people that are just in the US based are starting to evolve and starting to realize that they need to start buying on a global basis, start investing on a global basis, and so on. And that ultimately, I still think, drives prices up.
Edmund and Mitt, did you guys have comments?
I mean, the original question around fragmentation, I mean, for us, that just results in new distribution outlets. I'd say with respect to the original series and your points, I mean, many would certainly argue that there probably is a bubble. I mean, we've all read the John Landgraf quote. What do you say? There were 409 series or something last year, which was some gigantic multiple over the last few years. And look, at the end of the day, it's amazing for consumers. There's a lot of great product out there, a lot of great series, but it is driving up pricing, and it's ultimately it's harder to break out in a crowded field. That's all I would add.
We have another question over there.
So my question is just, since you guys have distributed your apps on so many different platforms, whether you could elaborate a little bit on where your consumption is primarily coming from, or if you've got any usage you can share.
It's probably going to be the same for everybody, but it's literally the popularity of the platforms closely aligns to most consumed on. So you're going to have iOS and Android, probably desktop, and then you'll see growth in connected devices, starting with Roku and Amazon TV and Chromecast and Android TV, et cetera. So typical internet consumption.
Yeah, I just look at my CDN bill, right, and I can tell you that connected TV is eating up and quickly becoming.
File.
Yeah.
For us, it's always been lean back type of streaming devices. So Roku, month over month since we launched on Roku years ago, has always outperformed the rest, followed by the game consoles, so Xbox and PlayStation. Most recently, I would say our fastest growing platforms are iOS and Android, in that we've been just further investing in the experience and working more closely with the App Store BD teams on different featured placement and marketing and promotion around those apps. So we're seeing the most growth there, but historically it's always been set-top box-like experiences.
We're a little bit different, only in that it depends on the type of content, and if you look at how long people are consuming, which I think is important. You can't just count initiated play events, or however you define it. You have to look at duration as well. So, but similar stories here. iOS, Android, web play a big role. Connected TVs, platforms like Roku and Apple TV and Xbox is where we see longer duration periods, but substantial usage there as well.
I'll add that as a global platform, there's a lot of factors that drive this as well that are not necessarily in play in North America. The quality of the network is an important factor. Also, the adoption of the device type is an important factor, and we see radically different adoption characteristics in Asia, Pacific, and Europe and Africa than we do here.
The other thing is not just usage, it's transactions, right? So we see far more transactions on connected TV or desktop. And we see mobile and tablet transactions declining.
Interesting.
We have time for one more, or?
So I have a question about program promotion and how it's changed without having the benefit of a lead-in that linear networks have. What are the things you're doing that are effective in promoting the programs you have?
For us, we have promotion inventory baked into basically everything that we do. Those were corporate mandates and negotiated by senior leadership at the different networks. So we got that, and then in all of the apps, et cetera, that we deal with, and all the inventory shares also include the opportunity for promotional inventory to be baked into the streams. And also when we pitch out streams, we have the concept of the C3 or C7 feeds, which are basically taking the linear feed, has all the commercials in it, and then there's a secondary clean feed that has some of the national advertising and local advertising swapped out with stitched in promotional material. So, and then obviously everything else, outdoor, et cetera. But yeah, it's still there, and everyone's holding on to their little piece of that territory. The value statement right now is, what do you do as programmatic gets more savvy on all the different endpoints that we're on, and we can make actual money from this. Then the conversation becomes, well, how do we apply maths against all this to make the determination that this much promotional inventory equals this many more eyeballs, and that's worth more than this much ad revenue in return?
For us in the subscription business, we're less, obviously we're not ad driven. It's about good UX design, and it's about adjacencies. So we know that someone's coming. For instance, we just finished the third season of Power. A lot of Power users coming to the Stars app to consume, which is fantastic. It's about putting the right type of content surrounding that, and a lot of that's done by data, and a lot of that's done from a curated programming perspective. But it's about getting the right content in front of the right viewer so they can get back into the next piece of content. On a very simple level, it's what we would just call like at the end of an episode, you automatically roll to the next episode. We've all seen that type of functionality, and it does a lot to keep you engaged. What do you do at the end of that series? What show are you rolling them to after that? What are you doing at the end of the movie? What's the next thing you're pointing them to keep them engaged in the show? Less about lead-ins and pre-roll, post-roll for us.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists.